Outside the Box Reviews, we are taking a look at the NECA Terminator Series 4 T-800 Endoskeleton. And while this is the first T-800 Endoskeleton I'm reviewing, this is like the fourth one put out by NECA. The original one was done back in the Cult Classics line. Basically the same idea, endoskeleton figure with a display base, I think full of human skulls, which would have been kind of cool to have. They did one in Wave 1 of the Terminator 2 line, which I did pick up, but I'll show you in a minute why I didn't review it. They also did one in Wave 2, a battle-damaged one with a Gatling gun, which I really do wish I would have picked up, but I was kinda hesitant to. And then finally, they did this one, which I guess is technically supposed to be from the original Terminator, but is basically the same endoskeleton with some slight changes. So let's take a closer look at the figure. So first up, the endoskeleton comes with his plasma rifle, which looks great, has some great black and silver mixed together, very dirty looking silver, very, very nicely done gun, very cool looking, accurate to the film, and such an iconic weapon. Cameron's really good at making futuristic guns, or at least Stan Winston's very good at making futuristic guns for James Cameron. I'm not sure who really is to blame. Maybe it's not even Stan Winston. Who knows? But somebody is good at making futuristic looking weapons for James Cameron movies, and I just think this looks fantastic. NECA did a great job sculpting it. The endoskeleton also comes with an additional hand. Now this isn't the hand I would have thought we would have gotten. This is an extra kind of relaxed hand to go on the figure instead of the trigger finger. I kind of would have thought we would have gotten a second trigger finger instead, but this is what we got. And as for the figure itself, I love the sculpt NECA's done on it. It is fantastic. It's a nice and dirty silver paint on there, the red eyes. Kind of surprised they didn't do like light piping or anything, but I'm perfectly fine they didn't. But it's got that iconic skull look to it. It has the enamel kind of teeth, which I think is really nice. Coming around here, we can see all the details on the side of the head. Coming around the back, just very, very nicely detailed. Around the neck, you can see all the pistons and wires, and that continues down to the chest. Same kind of deal going on here, all the mechanical bits. Wires going over to the shoulders. You have the pistons on the upper arm, the very kind of narrow lower arm, and then we have the hand, this one being the trigger finger I already spoke of, but very great detail there, and then the same kind of open hand we get with the replaceable hand here on the other side. Looking very cool. That's such an iconic look, that Terminator hand. It's such a big thrust of Terminator 2 is that extra hand, which never really does much of anything, but they get it, and it's iconic to me at least. He's got the pistons around the waist, the kind of spinal column coming down the back. He actually has little flaps on his back, which I don't know what these are supposed to do, but they will open and close, and mine are actually kind of loose, so when you dangle the figure around, they kind of flop all over the place. Onto the legs, all the pistons go into the legs. I think there's a total of 6, 3 on each leg. Very nicely done. Then it has the feet with the little ball heel in the back, and the Terminator toes. As for articulation, that's where this figure suffers a lot because of all the great sculpt detail. The head will move side to side on a swivel, barely. These pistons and wires and everything very much hinder any movement you could get out of it, but it does sort of move side to side. The shoulders will move forward actually fairly well. That wire is going to kind of tangle up as it moves, but you can get a good range of motion out of it. You can also go out to the side very easily. The wire connects at the joint itself where it's not moving, so it actually can go all the way out, which is very nice. The bicep has a rotation, a cut joint up at the top, which is great. And then when you move the elbow, you can actually even see the pistons pumping away in there, which is really cool. And then we can swivel out the wrist, just a swivel, no ball joint or anything. Swivel out the waist, once again, very, very limited because of the pistons there, but the pistons do move as he rotates. The legs are a very, very tricky piece to move because they are on pin and socket kind of joints, but going forward is very hard with these pistons. It's actually pretty much impossible. You can move a little back, a little forward, but the pistons are all kind of fighting each other, but they would move. When you go out to the side, they move fantastically, but it's just trying to get it to go forward that just does not want to make that motion. We have a bend at the knee, which is a really nice bend there. We have a swivel at the foot, and we actually even have toe articulation. And we do have peg holes at the bottom, which is very important because this guy does not like to stand up on his own at all. He is very, very fond of falling off your shelf. Which brings us to this, my Series 1 Terminator Endoskeleton. And this guy has seen better days. Now, looking at these two side by side here, I never really compared them that closely, but this one does have a shinier paint scheme than the Terminator version. The original one is much more just plain metallic, and the new one's dirtier. And while the details on this one are pretty similar otherwise, the biggest change actually is the head. The head on this figure was retooled for the Terminator version, because this head just didn't work out. The mouth had a hinge, which was the extra bit of articulation there, and you can see actually has a piston that comes out of his sinus cavity, and I'm missing one on one side. But the jaw never wanted to stay shut. It always just sat there mouth agape, and really, I kind of prefer just having it stuck shut. You can see a lot of changes. The shape of the skull, the eyes are much more intense on the newer sculpt. So there is a decent amount of difference just in that, but the rest of the body is pretty similar. You can see down here as I was speaking with the legs, mine are all torn to bits. But on the plus side, now there's articulation. I can actually move them forward and play with that range of articulation there. So while it doesn't quite look right, it does move. And I do wonder if this is another figure where the plastic was bad, because as I was just trying to mess with him, get the gun out of his hand earlier, his thumb broke off. So just a very fragile figure. And I have not had that problem with the new one, but the old one, very flimsy, very prone to falling apart. His back flaps are less wavy though, so that's kind of nice. So overall, this particular incarnation of the Endoskeleton, I actually really like. I'm gonna give him a recommend, with the caveat that this one has held up well for me. The previous one, the Series 1 version, did not. And I don't really know if it's the fact that I've been much more careful with this figure and treated it like it's made out of glass, as opposed to the other one where I just kind of didn't know any better and started playing with it and things just started snapping like crazy. Plus I have a better shelf set up here than I did when I first got the other one. Or if this is really that much of an improvement of the figure. I know the head sculpt is definitely an improvement. I like the paint job a lot more too, but it is something just be very cautious with one of these figures. Don't mess with it too hard, and I think you could have a very nice looking endoskeleton, which you gotta have with a Terminator display. You gotta have the T-800 endoskeleton. Unfortunately, this one will work for either movie. You could army build the crap out of these. Well, you probably could if you could find enough of them online for a decent price. But overall, yeah, I'm gonna recommend this one. I like this incarnation of it, and I'm glad NECA went back to it and made kind of a safer version. It's also the reason I have not plopped down the money for the battle damaged one from Wave 2, because I'm really not sure how well that one's going to hold up. I think it's more the other body than this one, and I am just wary of getting one that's going to fall apart again. And having paid more than the retail value on it to get one now just is a frightening prospect. Make sure you check me out on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, this has been our Outside the Box Reviews. I'll be back.